Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And where we're going to be diving in is the Foreword to the 4th edition, which is, I don't know, you don't have to find it exciting, but we'll do our best. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. And then if I do well on time, no promises, we'll even get into the doctor's opinion. So welcome everyone. So Foreword to the 4th edition, page XXIII. So it goes on to say, this 4th edition of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not even a full way through the sentence, but what I want to emphasize is the title of the book is Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the title of this book. And we spoke in the Foreword to the 2nd edition about why that was important. And the reason it's important is because the fellowship is named after the book, not the other way around. So the fellowship that we are a part of is named after the book Alcoholics Anonymous, which indicates that it's probably an important thing to look at, to study, to learn from, to have an experience with. So this 4th edition of Alcoholics Anonymous came off the press in November 2001 at the start of a new millennium. Since the 3rd edition was published in 1976, worldwide membership of AA has just about doubled to an estimated 2 million or more, with nearly 100,800 groups meeting in approximately 150 countries around the world. And what we're seeing is there is a tremendous growth, not only in the size of the fellowship, but the people who are recovering, getting well, working with others, and carrying this message that in that approximate 25-ish years, that the fellowship doubled. And we don't quite see that same level of growth in between, the approximately 25 years. We've plateaued a little bit. And we can ponder the reasons why. And there could be a number of reasons, but at least for me, it's always important to have a look at what were we doing well. When we were going through the Foreword to the 2nd edition and we were seeing those success rates. Now, again, I emphasize that I don't think our success rates have changed. I think those of us who come to Alcoholics Anonymous and do Alcoholics Anonymous and give Alcoholics Anonymous our best effort, those success rates are the same. But Alcoholics Anonymous, as much as I love the meetings and I love the fellowship, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12 steps, as taken out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think when we do that, we see those similar success rates. So it says literature. Hey, we're reading some of that. We're reading that literature. Literature has played a major role in AA's growth. And a striking phenomenon of the past quarter century has been the explosion of translations of our basic literature. We're looking at the basic one, the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, but some of the other ones too, into many languages and dialects. In country after country where the AA seed was planted, it has taken root, slowly at first, then growing by leaps and bounds when literature has become available. Currently, Alcoholics Anonymous has been translated into 43 languages. So what are we talking about there? So that AA seed, what is the seed of Alcoholics Anonymous? Well, in my experience, the seed of Alcoholics Anonymous is the directions for recovery. The diagnosis of what is alcoholism, the directions for recovery, and the solution that this book takes us to, that is the seed. And an interesting thing, because it's springtime, let's talk a little about botany. Not too much, because we'll learn that I have some severe limitations to my botany information, but I got you guys. What's interesting about a seed is a seed has everything that it needs in order to grow, everything that it needs in order to thrive. If you plant a seed, even an old seed, in the right conditions, it will grow. Now, here's one of the other things that's interesting. What happens? Some of you are enjoying an actual spring. I live in a part of Canada where that's not really a thing. So we're just experiencing almost the end of winter. I'm just kidding. Some of the Canadians, y'all know my struggle. But the rest of you who are enjoying a delightful spring, you've probably been doing some of your springtime planting. You've been planting seeds. But what is interesting is that when a seed is planted into the ground, where does it grow first? It grows first down. It grows its roots. And you see, that's an important reminder, because that's often the case when we're working with others, is those roots get grown first. And I don't see the immediate results, but just because I don't see the immediate results of my work and my effort and my 12-step attempts, that does not mean something isn't happening. Because to be fair, I think people like us are probably some impatient gardeners, but you're probably not planting a seed and then 3 days later, like, okay, I got to see what's happening, digging it up and replanting it. I have a feeling you're not supposed to do that. Again, not an expert in horticulture, but I'll throw that out. You're probably not supposed to do that. And so it's got to grow its roots before we can see the stem and the leaves and the plant itself. So just because I do not see the immediate results of my effort does not mean something isn't happening. And so what are we talking about in this paragraph? And how I like to do this is I like to imagine you guys could go anywhere, that you could travel anywhere in the world. I mean, pick a place. And imagine that during this, you're going to go on a vacation, y'all. And it's not going to be just like a week or 2 weeks. Imagine you're going on a 6 months, 1 year, 18-month long vacation to anywhere in the world that you would want to go. But we know in order to stay well, we've got to work with others. And so imagine that wherever we're going, that there's no meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Imagine Alcoholics Anonymous has not made its way to wherever that is. And you show up, and in order to stay well, we're going to have to work with others. And so you find some alcoholics, you reach out to a couple, maybe hospitals, churches. That's what they would do in the old days. They tried to get a hold of some alcoholics to work with, and you would carry that message, one alcoholic to another. And some of them would be able or begin to take the actions of the steps, and they would recover. And a number of you would be well and staying well, and a meeting would form. And that would attract more people. And you'd be able to help those. And imagine you're in a country where English is not the predominant language. Well, at first, you're going to be probably working with English-speaking people, because that seems to be a language we're all able to speak. I hope so, because I'm really limited. English is barely on my scale. So if you're hoping for me to do some translation, it's a struggle. Actually, a couple times I got to speak in meetings, online obviously, in Iran. And that was so cool. I got to speak with a translator. And really, the takeaway from that is I am a translator's nightmare. I am the worst. I talk too fast. I speak in metaphors. You know what I mean? I'm just all over the place. I go on tangents. I'm a nightmare for those poor translators. So that's the takeaway. But imagine you start working with some people who are bilingual, and they start carrying the message to the people who are speaking that native tongue. And it grows, and that is what we're talking about when we say the AA seed is planted. And it'll grow. But where it really begins to grow and take root and leaps and bounds, as the language that is described, is when this book is available in a language that people are able to read. That's when this thing explodes. And again, what are we pointing to? We're pointing to the importance of this book. And actually, it was 2 weekends ago, I got the privilege of going out to speak at a conference, a roundup in Vancouver. And I'm a little all over the place. I'm like, woo, let's go check out this with the good vibes. Woo, what's up? They had as many conferences do. Some of you are about to go to that London conference. Yeah, what up, London? Some of you are like, please stop. I can't. I tried. And so they would have this little literature room, and I went in there, and it was the coolest thing, because they had they had the big book available in person. It's available in, well, it's spoken about in 43 languages and probably well more than that. My book doesn't have an asterisk that gives me more languages, but some of y'all do. But to see them and to hold them and to look at them, it was so cool. And then at many roundups, so if you've not gone to a roundup or conference or convention, spoilers, what they do is they do a sobriety countdown, where they count down the person with the longest number of years sober, and they count down all the way to somebody who maybe has 1 or 2 days. And the person you're chanting and cheering and hooting and hollering. And it's not just me doing that, because I will show up to meetings and just do that. It's better on Zoom because I'm muted. And y'all can't hear me being like, woo, just disruptive as heck. But the person with the longest amount of sobriety gives a book to somebody with the newest sobriety. And because, again, the importance of this book, and it was really cool. There was like 3 newcomers, and one of the newcomers, it was clear that English wasn't her first language, and I got the opportunity to talk to her, and I was asking, what other language do you speak? And she said Mandarin, and I'm like, come with me, which sounds like I'm just kidnapping a person. Don't do that. Consent's important. And we go to the literature table where they have the big book in Mandarin, and we were able to get her a Mandarin big book. And what an incredible moment, to be able to have this literature available to a human being who might not otherwise have the opportunity to recover. So I don't know. I'm a nerd, and I didn't expect to be a nerd when I got here. That really snuck up on me. But to me, that was just a beautiful and cool moment. So it says, as the message of recovery has reached larger numbers of people, it has also touched the lives of a vastly greater variety of suffering alcoholics. When the phrase, we are people who normally would not mix, page 17 of this book, was written in 1939, it referred to a fellowship composed largely of men and a few women, which is really generous, because it was like one woman, really, really generous, when it's like a few, just a sprinkling, a handful. And it says, a few women with quite similar social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. And I talk about this. It's a bunch of middle-aged white dudes named Bill and Bob and William and Robert and maybe a Richard or two. I can't not make that dick joke. Some of you got it. Yeah, Richard. So it's a bunch of these middle-aged white dudes. And when I came here, I'm like, it's just a bunch of old guys. By the way, I'm probably as old as those old guys when I got here. So forgive me, forgive me of the folly of youth. But it says, like so much of AA's basic text, again, this book is a textbook. It is meant to be learned from, studied, but deeper than that, I want to equate it to like a chemistry book. I want to work this thing like an experiment and have an experience. That's what this thing is about. It's not a great coaster. We know that to be true because most people have spilled coffee on their big book. It's not a good coaster. It's meant to be used and lived and studied. So so much of AA's basic text, those words have proved to be far more visionary than the founding members could ever have imagined. And so what we're referencing is, I like to call this a forward to the 4th edition moment, where words that were written in 1939 have become far more true in 2001, and even more true in 2025. I had this moment. I'm like, what year is it? Well, literally my brain was like, we gone. I was almost about to say 2011, so that was not accurate. Where am I? Doing a big book study. Woohoo! All right. And so this idea that this line that we are people who normally would not mix is more and more true. The depth and breadth and width of people with a vast level of experiences, socioeconomic background, gender, race, culture. In fact, that's exactly what's going to say it's widened and deepened. So I'll just read it. The stories added to this edition represent a membership whose characteristics of age, gender, race, and culture have widened and deepened to encompass virtually everyone. The first 100 members could have hoped to reach. And you see, that's the thing. When we're in the Forewords, what we're talking about is what has not changed. The diagnosis for alcoholism has not changed because alcoholism itself has not changed. The directions on how to recover to get well has not changed. And the solution that we have has not changed. But what has changed is the stories. And the reason we change the stories is because I think it's a human thing to desperately, desperately want to belong, but not want to be a part of what you guys got going on here. I'm not like you. You guys got some real heavy alcoholism, but I've got the baby alcoholism, diet alcoholism. I need AA light. That's what I'm after. Or you're here and you're like, you don't understand. I got like massive King Kong alcoholism, Godzilla level. I don't know, Mothman. That is the weirdest reference. No, that's probably not true. I was going to say that's the weirdest reference I'm going to make today. I shouldn't hold myself to a standard we don't know if I'm going to live up to. But we've got these massive monsters of alcoholism, and I'm so much worse than anyone else. And that's why we change the stories. So more of us whose names are not Bill or Bob or William or Robert, although we might have embodied a Richard or two. Come on, yeah, some of you got it. That we can see people like us. I can recover young. Women recover too, as a story. The people from different backgrounds, different experiences, young, old, rich, poor, lost everything, lost little, but are dying on the inside, that we can recover. And that is why the stories have changed. And it's a reminder. See, this book was meant to go out and into the world and carry this message. And it was meant to have everything that an alcoholic could possibly need in order to recover with this book alone. But in 2025, got the year this time, in 2025, we don't have to recover alone. We can have sponsors that help us work through the steps. We can come to meetings. We can come to Big Book studies. So glad you're here. I love you. We can do these things. And we don't have to do it alone. And so it is a reminder that we had the stories so that people could read these stories and think, man, that's like me. That happened to me. I felt like that. I went through that. Man, I think this thing could work for me too. But it is a reminder that that is who we are all called to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. A demonstration of this program and a beacon of light and of hope for those who are in the darkness and do not think that there could be a way out. There is an alcoholic that only you can help. What an honor and a privilege to carry this message. So it says, while our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message. So again, the first 164 pages by and large have not changed because the message has not changed. Alcoholism has not changed. The solution has not changed because it works. It works. But what has changed is sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in new customs and practices within the fellowship. Taking advantage of technological advances. For example, AA members with computers, it's happening, can participate in meetings online, sharing with fellow alcoholics across the country or around the world. And I'll be honest with you. Well, actually, hold on. In any meeting, anywhere, AA share experience, strength, and hope with each other in order to stay sober and help other alcoholics. Now, all of the stories that were taken out of the back of the book and the first edition stories that were taken out, second and third edition stories that were taken out, they're all in a book that is called Experience, Strength, and Hope. So if you're like, tell me more about some of these stories that were taken out, well, you can read them. But also, when we talk about sharing experience, strength, and hope, what do I need to share my experience with? Well, I've got to share my experience with my alcoholism. And what that looks like is sharing experience with the allergy, with the obsession of the mind. But it's also important that I share my experience with the solution, experience with the spiritual awakening that is promised, and my experience with the 12 steps, which is how I get from that hopelessness to that hope, from that hopeless state of mind and body. And so many of us with that broken spirit, to that state of spiritual awakening, it is the 12 steps. So I've got to share my experience with those. And I promise you, it is not my strength that I am sharing. And it is not my hope. It is the strength not my own, and a hope not my own. That's what I'm sharing. And it says modem to modem or face to face, or in 2025, modem to modem and face to face, Zoom. AAs speak the language of the heart in all its power and simplicity. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. For years before COVID, I would get to this part of the book and I would go, okay. Ooh. And then, because here's the thing, I have genuinely a passion for accessibility. Actually, this is coming to mind because we were talking about translations and we were talking about accessibility. If there's anyone here who struggles with dyslexia, this should have been an announcement, but it's happening in the middle of this. It's happening in the middle of the study. But if anyone here struggles with dyslexia, I converted the doctor's opinion and the first 164 pages to Open Dyslexic, which is a dyslexic-friendly font, and I will send that to you just while I'm thinking about that. So I have a passion for accessibility. That is something that I believe strongly in and that I care deeply about. And this was after I got sick, and I had a friend who was really struggling with getting to meetings because of her similar illness. And I looked up some online meetings. Now, I'll be honest with you, I did not give them my best go. I found myself in a couple like text-based, like chat-based meetings. And I'm sure there are phenomenal ones. I didn't find those ones. I found those ones where there is somebody drunk texting the meeting, and then somebody else codependently trying to convince them not to drink because they're actively drunk. And I'm like, oh, no. And so when I would come to this part of the book, I would be like, oh man, like, no, I don't know about those online meetings. But then I would espouse the value and the virtue of speaker tapes. I love speaker tapes. And I would talk about that and link some speaker tapes and all that sort of thing. And then COVID happened and we hopped online. And this is what I love, is that this is a forward to the 4th edition moment in the middle of the forward to the 4th edition, something that has become more true as time has gone on. And so COVID happens, we go online, and I was convinced of the insensate nature of online meetings, that it was going to be cold, emotionless, that it was going to suck and be lame, and I was going to hate it, and it was going to be awkward and uncomfortable. And for 30 seconds, I was right. And for the rest of the time, it's been just the best. I love it. And it really, when there are people like, oh, I don't like Zoom, I'm like, you're missing out. I don't yell at them. That would be a little aggressive, and that's not how we carry a message. You're missing out. It's the best. But it's incredible, and it's allowed us to find our people and to connect with vibrant meetings and vibrant recovery. And you can absolutely get sober and stay sober and have a spiritual awakening on Zoom and work with others around the world. It's the coolest thing. So, I think the real takeaway is that I was wrong, which everyone loves. It's a lovely takeaway. I was wrong. So that is the forward to the 4th edition. And so let's dive into the doctor's opinion. And this is an exciting part of the book because what we're going to be diving into is really a lot of crucial step 1 information. Step 1 information. In the doctor's opinion, it's composed of 1 letter and 1 statement written by Dr. William D. Silkworth, and where he's going to lay out the information about what it means to be an alcoholic. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about Silky. We're going to talk about why he is important. So, the doctor's opinion. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. And it's like, what? You think the reader will be interested in what now? Because I'll be honest with you, it's like, why are we putting this all in the Roman numerals? Because most of us, when we open a book, we're not interested in Roman numerals. What do you mean the reader will be interested? And what we're talking about is the idea that we want to see if this whole thing, let's be honest, we see the steps on the wall and we're like, that's nuts. I'm not interested in that. But we want to see, what do smarty pants people, to be fair, when I come here, I think I'm the smartiest of all the smarty pants, but I can't keep those smarty pants dry because I keep drinking and wetting them. You know what I'm saying? Like a lady, but I think I'm Little Miss Smarty Pants, and I want to know what do the other people of my intellectual caliber think? What do the people of science and medicine and great philosophy think about this plan of recovery? 'Cause nothing but the best for this silly little drunk, you know? 'Cause that's kind of what it's saying. Less condescending than it might have come out of my face, but I'm making fun of me. I'm not making fun of anyone else. So, it says, convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. And this is what I want to point out. When we talk about the doctor's opinion, we're talking about Dr. Silkworth. And Dr. Silkworth, we're going to talk about, he is an expert in alcoholism. He devoted most of his career, his life, to working with alcoholics and drug addicts. And he was on the front lines of alcoholism, and as well the front lines of what was happening with the recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous in its very early days, before it was even called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I point this out because this is not a doctor. And I joke about this. He's not a dermatologist who saw his aunt get a little too tipsy a time or two. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he was front row and center to alcoholism. And so it's based on experience. I emphasize that because really everything in Alcoholics Anonymous is experiential. It is not intellectual. I cannot think my way to a spiritual awakening, but I can think myself into suicidal ideation. Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. Just a lovely day, and I'm going to ruin it with my thoughts. Just having those. But I can't get there with thinking. I have to get there with action. And what I'm after is an experience. And this is a man who had front row experience to this illness. So it says, a well-known doctor. And that well-known doctor is our homeboy, Dr. William D. Silkworth. The middle name the D stands for Duncan. That's delightful. Oh no, you know when you get things stuck in your brain and you can't stop saying them? What just happened was America runs on Duncan. Not sponsored, not affiliated, undiagnosed ADHD. That's what that was. But I mean, the diagnostic information of what alcoholism is, that runs on Duncan. William D. Duncan Silkworth. Yeah. Also known, by the way, as Silky. He was a great guy. So, a well-known doctor, chief physician. So this is a man that is famous now, also chief physician. When we say chief physician, that is the boss. He's not the guy that owns the hospital. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But he is this guy that... He's the head doctor. He's the boss doctor. And it was reported, and probably a little bit exaggerated, Bill was known to do that. An alcoholic? Exaggerating? What? I know, shock and awe. But it was reported that in his career, he oversaw the treatment of 50,000 alcoholics and drug addicts. That's why we care about his opinion, because he was front row to this thing. So chief physician, he is the boss at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. Now, the hospital is the Towns Hospital in New York City, and it was owned by a gentleman, which, as a Canadian, it was a weird thing to get my mind around. But a lot of the hospitals are named after the people who owned them. So the owner of the Towns Hospital was a guy known as Charles Towns, and this just arrived in the mail today, so it's like perfect timing. So it's King Charles of New York City, and so he owned the Towns Hospital, and it was in New York City, and it was right across the street from Central Park. And at the time, Central Park had a lot of homelessness and a lot of struggles. Now, the town's hospital, what I will say, was it was expensive. It was expensive, but it was right in the epicenter of a lot of the alcoholism and drug addiction that was happening in in New York City at the time. And this is a story of how he got the hospital up and going. And this is a hospital that's not like a multifaceted hospital. This hospital was only for treating alcoholics and only for treating drug addicts. Also, if you're interested in this book, it was written by Gary Neidhart, and he is delightful. He wrote the Bobby B book. Yeah. And his wife, Mary, is the best. Gary N. Mary, what up? Sorry, focus page. Sorry. So this hospital, its only focus was alcoholism and drug addiction. And so again, we're talking about an expert in alcoholism and drug addiction. We're talking about somebody who worked with 50,000 alcoholics and drug addicts, and who was working as a head doctor at a hospital, who again was only focused on alcoholism and drug addiction. That is whose opinion we're listening to. An expert. Not an expert based in theory, but an expert based in experience. So he gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. And what we're doing when we talk about him being a specialist in alcoholism, a specialist in this type of work, is what is known as an appeal to authority. So there's an appeal to emotion, and I'm sure many of us are familiar with that, which is, if you loved me, you'd quit drinking. How could you keep doing that? This is not an appeal to emotion, and it is appeal to experience. And so this appeal to this authority, this is a guy who's an expert. So it says, in late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. And what I would like you to do is, if you're writing in your book, to underline, highlight, make a note of hopeless. And who we are talking about is Bill Wilson. We're talking about Bill Wilson, because it doesn't say. So Bill Wilson, at one time in his life, he was a competent businessman. He was good at his job and he made a whole lot of money. But that was not enough to keep him sober or not make him an alcoholic. He was still an alcoholic of a type that is regarded as hopeless. And the reason it is important to acknowledge the hopelessness of the illness, it is only when I come to the end of myself and I see the hopelessness of my predicament that I am willing to grab a hold of the hope that is on offer. So it says, in the course of his third treatment. So Bill Wilson, and it was actually his fourth treatment. Just in summarizing it, they mushed two of the treatments together. But what I will point out, anyone here ever go to rehab more than once? And then relapse immediately after rehab? I want to say this with love. You're not special. That's what Bill did. I mean, you're special in the sense that we love you and you're incredible and divinely created and we care so much about you, but you're not different. That's Bill Wilson. So it says, who in the course of his third treatment acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. And I know this might seem a little mawkish, but what I will be doing is I will be bringing up my little history diagram that I made, problem, solution, program of action. So what happened? And we'll start with our homie Bill. And by the way, that's Dr. Silkworth. I don't know which way I'm on the screen, but that's Silky. And I always like to be handsome fella, lovely guy, my homie, my bestie. We'll make friendship bracelets, T Swifty style, me and Silky. Why am I like this? I have taken a lot of inventory, so I have an idea. All right. So Bill Wilson, what happens is he goes to the town's hospital and he learns from Dr. Silkworth. And you can follow this on page 7 if you want. You don't have to bounce around if you don't want to. But he goes to the town's hospital for the first time in his story. And he learns from Dr. Silkworth what what differentiates an alcoholic from a non-alcoholic. He learns the symptoms of alcoholism. He learns that he has a physical allergy, an allergy of the body, that once he starts, he cannot stop drinking. And he learns that he has a mental obsession, the obsession of the mind, that when he says he's not going to drink again, he has a thought that will take him back again and again and again to that first drink. And to be fair, we don't speak so much of the spiritual malady in step one because other human beings have the spiritual malady. So in step one, we focus on what differentiates us, what makes us different from non-alcoholics. And non-alcoholics do not have the allergy. Non-alcoholics do not have the obsession of the mind. So that's what differentiates us. And so he learned about that. And then he got drunk again. Because I can't stay sober on an idea. I can't stay sober on knowledge. And he goes back to the town's hospital. Now he goes 2 other times, but in his story, it's smushed into one time. And in the hospital bed, he's there. And he overhears Dr. Silkworth telling his wife, listen, Lois, you're going to have to lock Bill up in an institution or you're going to have to make funeral arrangements because he's not going to survive. Bill Wilson, he's not going to make it. This thing is fatal. And Bill Wilson, they didn't tell him because they didn't think that was ethical at the time. And they didn't want to bum him out. That's bad news. But Bill Wilson overheard. And he knew of the hopelessness. He knew he was absolutely done. He was gone. He was in trouble. He was going to die of this thing, and he was full of fear. And he drank again because fear is not enough to keep us sober. Consequences aren't enough to keep us sober. Now, Bill Wilson, in his story, in between the second and third hospitalization, who shows up is our homeboy, Ebby Thatcher. It was his birthday, I think, yesterday or the day before. It was his belly button. I mean, he's not with us anymore, but that was just a fun fact. Ebby Throckmorton Thatcher. Woo! Throckmorton's his middle name. And I think that's too fun of a fact not to share with you. So Ebby Thatcher carries the 2 pieces of information to Bill Wilson that we need to know. So Bill Wilson, from Dr. Silkworth, Bill Wilson learned of the problem. So you can make a note when it says in the course of his 3rd treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. You can make a note that he learned of the problem, the physical allergy and the mental obsession. But what Ebby Thatcher brought him was knowledge of the solution and the solution and the program of action. So just to do the history very quickly, what happened was this guy, this homie, Roland Hazard, the third, he meets and works with Dr. Carl Jung intensively. And he's like, there's no way I'm ever going to relapse. And then guess what happens? He relapses and he goes back to Carl Jung and he's like, dude, what the heck? And Carl Jung said, my bad, homie. You are an alcoholic. I misdiagnosed you. The only solution there is for people like you is a spiritual awakening. And that does not come easy. You can't hang out and hope that happens for you. You've got to go out and find it. So Roland Hazard, in that moment, knows what our solution is. It is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. That is our solution. And he gets in contact with a group that was known as the Oxford Group. And they weren't focused on alcoholism. That wasn't their purpose. They were a religious group, and what they were about was having a surrendered life to the God of their understanding. It was about having an experience of God. And he's like, oh, an experience, I need one of those. And so he gets involved with the Oxford Group, and they had a course of action, which later became our 12 steps. And Ebby Thatcher was on trial. And he had done some stuff. He got drunk and started shooting birds after he painted half the house. He had also gotten drunk and had a bit of a DUI where he crashed into an old lady's farmhouse, rolled down the window and asked for a cup of coffee. Both of those, not cool. So he was looking at a 6-month commitment. And our friend Roland Hazard shows up and offers him knowledge of the spiritual awakening in the program of action. Ebby Thatcher stays sober. And he then carries the message to Bill Wilson of the solution, spiritual awakening, and the program of action, what will later become our 12 steps. And in this moment, Bill Wilson has the 3 pieces of information that we need to know in order to recover from this illness. I got to know what the problem is. I got to know what the solution is. And I've got to know how to get from the problem to the solution. And so that's what we're talking about here. And I will stop the screen share and I'll throw all this stuff in the WhatsApp chat and all of that. So it says, as part of his rehabilitation, so for Bill Wilson, as part of him getting well and staying well, he commenced, which is to begin. He didn't just do it once. This is a way of life. So he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. 12-step work. We haven't even really talked about the allergy or the obsession, but already we're talking about the importance of 12-step work, sponsoring others. To be fair, the word sponsor is not found in the first 164 pages for anyone that might be a little pedantic, but I will point out the job descriptions all over it. So that's what we're talking about. It says this has become the basis. So one alcoholic carrying this message to another, helping them take the course of action, having that spiritual awakening and carrying that to others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. Rapidly growing means it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to recover. It does not take long to work the steps quickly and thoroughly. It does not take long to have a spiritual experience and that it works. It was working because people were getting well and staying well. But also these men and their families. Back in those early days, the families also took this course of action. And it's just a reminder that although these 12 steps specifically will save somebody like my life, they're good for anyone who wants it. So it says this man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. And you can make a note of recovered because that is the hope. Recovered does not mean cured. Recovered means that the obsession of the mind is removed from me. And it happens as the result of the 12 steps. That is the point of the spiritual awakening. And so just in case you're like, oh, I don't like the word recovered, I'm never cured. No, we're not talking about that. There will never be a time where I could ever safely drink again. There will never be a time. And that's because of the allergy of the body. But there will also never be a time in which I can ever safely not be fully engaged in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous because of the obsession of the mind. Because if I stop doing this, that thought will come back. It might take a little while, but it'll come back, and I'll promise you I'll be suicidal before I take the drink because that's how my little brain works. It will come back and I will drink again. But that is what it means to be recovered. The thought is gone as the result of this course of action. So it says, I personally know scores of cases who are of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. Now, this is important. We can ask ourselves, if I want to diagnose myself, if I want to find out if I am an alcoholic like Bill, if I am of the hopeless variety, I can ask myself, have I tried other methods to get sober and to stay sober? And have they failed? And if I'm here, and I'll be honest with you, I'm so glad you're here, but if you're listening to me natter on a Wednesday, the chances are you have tried other things and they have failed. I regularly tell my sponsees I am the last resort of the truly hopeless, if you're hanging out with me. Love you guys. So have I tried other things and have they not worked? And I'll be honest, I did not try everything there was to try, but everything that I tried failed. And it's a sign that I might be of this hopeless variety. These facts, I'm just Peppa, in case you know what I'm trying to do, because I see the time, I got eyes on it. I am trying to get us through this first letter. That's what I'm trying to do. Am I doing a great job? Nope. Alrighty. In terms of time, I'm not being overly self-deprecating. These facts appear to be extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth. Rapid growth. It does not take long to get well. Inherent in this group, they may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. And I do always have to say that quite carefully. And so an epoch is an era of time. And annals is recorded history. That's what that means. So epoch, an era of time. And annals is recorded history. But how I visualize this, if you guys remember Beauty and the Beast, you guys remember that? And Beast had that library. Doesn't matter if it's a live action or the animated one. Or if you think of like another famous library, and I just imagine that library. And every single book in that library is about alcoholism. And on every book and in every page, what it is saying, and this is the truth of alcoholism, is that alcoholics are hopeless. There is no answer for people like us. And what he is saying is that there might be a new book. And on the page of that new book, it's saying there might be hope for people like us. That's what it's saying. A new age where there's a solution for those who are doomed to die of this thing. It says, these men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. And that is the belief. Oh, I'm pushing it, Peppa. That is the belief that Dr. Silkworth had in us. In this program, this way of life, that he's saying this about people he may not ever meet, like us. He's never going to meet us. He is passed on. And that you can believe everything that Paige says about her experience. That's the faith, not in me, because I'm a fall down drunk. Don't put faith in me. It's the faith in this program and the solution that we have. And it says, very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD. Now, what I will point out is that in the first edition, it said XXMD. His name was not in it. And that's why in the first edition, or the early parts, it was on page 1. But it got moved to the Roman numerals when his name was added. And his name was added after he passed away. And there's a literary convention, which is if you contribute to any of the numbered pages of a book, you're considered an author. And so in order for Alcoholics Anonymous to be Alcoholics Anonymous, not Alcoholics Anonymous, also helped by William D. Silkworth, they had to move it to the Roman numerals. So that's why that's there. And 1 minute left. Oh, girl, I am pushing it. I apologize. I'll stop there. Over to Peppa.